Now it's time for the show.
Do this look like work to you? Nah, looking at the lights like it's all of this for me. Everyone tonight is here, all of this for me. Hands in the air, yeah, all of this for me. Bottles over here, all of this for me.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in to the January 13th edition of The Rome Show. My name is Rocky Romanella, and I am flying solo tonight. My brother Andrew Romanella got stuck flying back from the one and only Salt Lake City, Utah. Man was out there doing his X Games on the slopes, carving it up, shredding the gnar, as a lot of people like to say. But I'm here with you, and we have a lot to go over. But before we get started, you can find us on the Hamilton Radio app, Channel 2. Find us on all the social medias. We are officially live on Facebook, so get excited. I'll share it. And I'm on a computer tonight, so even though I act as though I'm a dinosaur from a technology standpoint, when I sit next to my brother, I will be on my computer doing my best to answer your live write-ins and comments. The show is brought to you by 360 Management Services, Tighten the Lug Nuts, written by another Rocky Romanella, pretty good guy, number one sponsor of the show, so shout out to them. But again, like I said, so much happened in the sports world from last Monday to this Monday. We had 4 incredible NFL playoff games. We had a bunch of suspensions handed out today by Major League Baseball. We've got the national championship game primer. We've just got incredible things happening in the National Hockey League that I guess myself and maybe a handful of other people are really excited about. A couple of good fights over the weekend. I saw a hat trick live as a fan. That's something cool I'd like to talk. I'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But again, we got Mike Leach arriving at Mississippi State. We got Lane Kiffin back in the news. Kyrie Irving came back to the Nets last night, dropping 21 points on just 11 shots. They finally get a win. The Knicks score 40 points in a fourth quarter contest last night against the Heat. I mean, there are so many things happening in the sports world that it's just really exciting. It's really exciting times right now. And we are going to start off, though, with one thing that I think's got everyone fired up today, and that is the MLB handing down a year-long suspension to both the general manager of the Astros, Jeff Luhnow, and the manager, A.J. Hinch. And subsequently after MLB hands out that year suspension for cheating in the 2017 World Series, the Astros then go ahead and fire both individuals from their current positions. So, and just so you know, so not only were the general manager and the head coach handed 1-year suspensions and bans from Major League Baseball, the Astros are also forfeiting their first and second round picks in both the 2020 and 2021 drafts, and they were fined an unprecedented $5 million. That's right, $5 million, which is just absolutely unheard of and pretty crazy. And I've got to tell you, I agreed with the severity of the suspension. I agree with the MLB striking down with force. But there's just a couple of things that I have questions about, and I'll probably talk about those right now. And if you, the listener, have something to say, or you want to tune in, or you want to chime in, or you want to join in the discussion, just call 609-807-2492. That's right, 609-807-2492. So Robert Manfred wrote a 9-page dissertation as to how he came to his decision for this punishment. So to suspend A.J. Hinch and Jeff Luhnow the year, and the fine and the draft picks. However, no players will be disciplined in the matter. So it came out that in the dissertation that Robert Manfred wrote, which, by the way, if you don't know, Robert Manfred is the commissioner of Major League Baseball, it stated that this was a player-driven thing. So the players in the Houston Astros locker room got together with the film guys, and they started posting the live video feed of the center field camera that could show the catcher's signs, and they had a video TV outside the locker room. And if the players noticed a pitch that a call that they recognized, if they knew it was a fastball, they knew it was a curveball, they hit this trash can. So they signaled the player at the plate so they knew what pitch was coming. Now, in my opinion, obviously we all know that is cheating, and I just think it's interesting that there'll be no investigation on whether or not the players who were involved will be suspended or disciplined, which is just really interesting based on the fact that all of the evidence says that it was the players acting independently with the film staff. Now, obviously, as the head coach, you know what's going on, and you've decided to look a blind eye. So I get the AJ Hinch thing, but I just don't understand how no players can get in trouble. Whereas, I mean, if you go as far back as, the first biggest Major League Baseball cheating scandal when it comes to the World Series is the 1919 Black Sox scandal, where it is deemed that any player who knew or knows about throwing a game or cheating in a way to alter the score in their favor would be banned from baseball. So in my opinion, how's this any different? You've got a bunch of players using technology and resources at their disposal to get the upper hand on an opponent. Like, how is that not throwing a game? How is that not reprehensible? Like, I don't understand. Like, why aren't the players being held accountable here? And I heard a couple of people talking on the radio today that, well, Robert Manfred doesn't want to have an entire year's long worth of appeals and investigations, and we don't know how many players were involved. We don't know which players were involved. Now we have to do interviews. They have to do a full thing. So I kind of get the I don't want that type of media attention. I get that part. But at the same time, like, where is the accountability held on the players to not do this in the future? Now, I also read today in an article that kind of showed everything that Alex Cora of the Boston Red Sox is the next to have a similar punishment for the same actions in the 2018 World Series. So over the course of the last 3 years, 2 of the 3 World Series are now under review for teams cheating and stealing signs. So does Major League Baseball have a real problem? Does Major League Baseball have a culture of players and coaches who are going to go to they'll go to any means necessary to get the upper hand on their opponent? And the fact that the discipline is being handed out for actions in the World Series, to me, just makes it a little bit more, just makes it bigger. It makes it greater, right? Like if this was, I don't know, hey, for 25 games during the regular season, yeah, maybe people might look a blind eye, but like, come on. I mean, this is the World Series. And baseball, baseball is America's pastime. It's America's game. So if I'm Major League Baseball today, my message to the American public was that, hey, America's pastime, what we're best known for in sport is for cheating. Right? That was the message today. So not a great day for baseball. Not a great day for the Houston Astros or the future of the Houston Astros, based on the fact that they have no draft picks in the first or second round over the course of the next 2 years. Now, obviously, Major League Baseball has like 150 rounds in their draft, so I don't know how much it's going to hurt them. But, I mean, $5 million, 2 years, no first or second round draft picks, and they now have to get a new general manager and a new head coach. And by the way, the general manager is the sole responsibility for finding players and top talent on the team. So it is as if the Houston Astros have just been forced into a full-scale rebuild. And this is a team who, over the course of the last 5 years, who has been absolutely surging. A team that's been at the top of their division, the top of their league, in the World Series multiple times. Great story, just a great fan base. They've got a couple of great players like Jose Altuve and Alex Correa who are just telling incredible stories, great representatives of a hardworking culture on the field. And it's just been tainted and kind of ruined based on this ruling and based on the findings that, you know what, those guys were cheating. Right? So Jose Altuve, everyone loves you. Now they don't like you anymore. Right? Or whoever was involved. I've got to be a Mets fan. I get to hear about Carlos Beltran, who was involved in this too now. So so that was your straight off the roam today. Just a little caveat on the Houston Astros. And I just think that might have been the biggest news today. For me, I think the Houston Astros suspension was the biggest news today because I think the national championship game, I forgot it was happening today. I woke up today and I was like, oh my God, it's the national championship. Someone said it to me at work. I go, who's playing again? Because it's been a month and a half since the last time I heard anything about college football. I'm not going to get into that right now, though, because I would like to talk about something that did happen over the weekend, and that was the NFL playoffs. And I've got to tell you, my terribleness as a sports predictor, or NFL predictor for that matter, was on point on Saturday. I had a conversation at the water cooler on probably Thursday afternoon in the office. And that conversation was about Saturday's games. And my prediction was that the Niners-Vikings was going to be a close game, and the Ravens were going to blow out the Titans. Wow. That was awful. So much for being a sports guy. Zero feel there from this guy. The 49ers smoked the Vikings. The Vikings had no chance. And the Ravens just disappointed. And the Titans played incredible. And you got to hand it to Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry, mostly Derrick Henry, for absolutely carrying that team. And I guess you'll give credit to Mike Vrabel because their scheme, and I thought the offensive coordinator did a great job. I thought their play calling was impeccable. I thought to call a direct snap to Derrick Henry with the jump pass for the go-ahead touchdown there in the third quarter that brought him up by 2 scores was probably the back-breaking moment in that game. And I thought it was just masterfully coached. And I think that on the opposite side of the ball, you could say the same from a negative standpoint. I don't think that the Ravens prepared properly. I think that John Harbaugh looked at the wrong details. I think the team wasn't ready to play. And I know you can say Lamar Jackson, this is 2 times in the playoffs where you choked, and this is 2 times where you've shown that you can't be a winner. But everyone still loves Tony Romo, and that guy couldn't win a game in the playoffs either, right? And Lamar Jackson, to me, has just been an outstanding player for the last 2 years. No doubt the strong favorite to win the MVP candidate in the league. And by the way, the guy still had over 300 yards passing and over 100 yards rushing. Yeah, he made a couple bad decisions. He threw a couple errant passes, like the turnover, the interception in the third quarter after the timeout was probably if the jump pass by Derrick Henry wasn't the backbreaker, then the interception that Lamar threw in the third quarter right after that was. I like Lamar Jackson. I think his press conferences were awesome this year. I thought his presence on the field was awesome this year. And I think that he needed some help around him, and he didn't really get it. I mean, their defense didn't stop anybody. Okay, yeah, their defense didn't stop anyone. Their defense didn't stop a quarterback who, for all intents and purposes, was written off by over half the league. And by the way, kudos to Ryan Tannehill. Speaking about Ryan Tannehill, look what Ryan Tannehill can do when he has a healthy running back. It is incredible how much a good running back can make a quarterback look great. And all you have to do as a quarterback when you have a great running back is manage the game. And I thought Ryan Tannehill did a great job. I thought his poise in the pocket was good. He threw a couple of good passes. I think his stat line was a little bit better than it was when he played the Patriots a week earlier. And you got to think, do the Titans have enough magic to walk into Kansas City and win another game on the road? I don't know if that's possible. What the Chiefs did to the Texans was awesome. I loved it. And I think the Texans lost for all the reasons why I hate sports right now. I think the Texans lost because of analytics. They lost because they made dumb decisions and did not stick to their game plan. They lost because they went for it. They did a fake punt. They lost for it because they didn't go for it on fourth down. They lost because they did what a typical team does when they're playing someone that they're overmatched by. That team who comes out, fired up, ready to slay the dragon, out to a hot start, gets overconfident quick, and loses the fundamentals of whatever it was that their game plan was. And the Chiefs took full advantage of it, and being that they had been there a year earlier, were able to use that experience for a young Patrick Mahomes, who, even though he's still in his second year, was there last year. The guy's a playmaker, and they were able to feed on, a couple of good passes, a couple of good runs, and a couple of good catches, and ride that all the way to a 51-point victory over the Texans, which I just thought was incredible. And I don't know if the Titans have enough to stop that offense. I think Mike Vrabel is proving himself to be a pretty good play caller, a pretty good schemer, and I think that the offensive coordinator on the Titans deserves a lot of that credit. But at the same time, I just don't know if they have the firepower to take on the Chiefs in Kansas City. It's probably going to be cold, which I don't think will matter because they went to Foxborough. It will most likely be snowing, which I don't think will matter. I actually think bad weather will play into the hands of the Titans more so than the Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs are used to it, but Patrick Mahomes threw 5 touchdown passes on Saturday, or Sunday. It was Sunday. So I think the weather could be a factor, and I think weather could be a factor in favor of the Titans. So we'll see what happens there. But again, I thought those were 2 great games. And then finally last night, the Packers-Seahawks game was another good one. I just think that I'm impressed with the Packers because if you talked to me early on in the season and you asked me if I thought Green Bay had what it took to if you asked me, hey, do you think Green Bay has what it takes to get to the NFC Championship game this year? I would have said no. I would have said they a little overrated this year. They don't have the magic. But again, Aaron Rodgers continues to prove to be an elite quarterback, continues to be one of the best, and Davante Adams is just an incredible receiver. Not to mention Aaron Jones kicking off the game with a big run, getting their running game was a difference maker for them. And I just think it's funny that as much as we judge our quarterbacks on QB rating, on what their completion percentage is, on how many interceptions that they throw, on how many touchdown passes, on how many yards, every single team that has made it this far, so all 4 teams, Niners, Packers, Chiefs, and Titans, all establish some sort of running game. And you have to, and I think the one team you have to point out is the Titans for that, because Derrick Henry obviously led the way in the rushing department. And I think that's that old school scheme, that old school way of playing football where we're just going to run it down your throat and you can't do anything about it. And I think that's when you're playing sports. I said it last week to Andrew. I said, that's when you're playing on the gridiron, right? You're not playing on turf. You're not playing on field. You're actually playing on the gridiron. And I think that's really cool. So next week, we've got a couple of really good championship games. So in the NFC, we've got the 49ers versus the Packers, and they're playing in San Francisco. So I think you're going to see a high scoring game there. And you've got the Chiefs and the Titans. And I think that will also probably be in your 20s and 30s, just based on how high flying the offense of the Chiefs is. But again, I think the weather is going to play a factor, and the worse the weather is, I think the better chances the Titans have. But again, based on my predictions this week, that may be wrong. So there's a little bit up on the NFL, a couple other points in the NFL, and we'll stay local here. So, former Giants head coach Pat Shurmur takes the job with the Denver Broncos as the offensive coordinator. So, congrats, Pat. You're back to being an offensive coordinator. And by the way, he did a pretty good job with Minnesota before he became the head coach of the Giants, and they did a good job. So we'll see how he does as a coordinator there. Will the theory that coordinators should stay coordinators and not be head coaches prove to be true? As you see a lot of that happening in the NFL right now. And again, you saw the New York Giants hire Joe Judge, the wide receivers and special teams coach for the last 9 years with the New England Patriots. And I got to tell you, as a New York Giants fan, I got to say I hated the optics of how their hiring went down. Absolutely hated the optics. There were 3 teams in the NFC East that needed new head coaches. The Washington Redskins, the Dallas Cowboys, and the New York Football Giants all needed new head coaches, all needed new direction. We can all agree that the NFC East was just awful. And I think I grew up and watching the NFC East send 3 teams every year. I feel like it was no question NFC East has 3 teams in the playoffs every year, and it just hasn't been that way since the Giants won their last Super Bowl. And to see the Washington Redskins hire Ron Rivera right away, and to see the Dallas Cowboys hire Mike McCarthy right away, just showed me that those 2 teams knew what they wanted. They wanted experience. They wanted someone who had been to the Super Bowl before, and there was no one else in the interview process. They didn't need to think about who they were or where they wanted to go. They knew exactly what they wanted. Whereas you had the Giants, on the other hand, who needed to find someone to reinvigorate a Giants culture that has lost its way. They needed to find someone that was not an offensive coordinator based on the last 2 hires being offensive coordinators and failing. And they probably needed to find someone on the younger side. And it seemed as though they had this whole process laid out. They had 5 guys coming in. They had Mike McCarthy in. They were set to have Matt Rule. And up until the day Matt Rule was supposed to interview with the New York Giants, he was the front runner. And the day that Matt Rule shows up to interview with the New York Giants, I look on TV, I get to work, and there is a breaking alert on ESPN saying Matt Rule hired Carolina Panthers head coach. And I'm like, what? Giants expected to hire Joe Judge from the Patriots. I go, what? Now, I've listened to Joe Judge's soundbite from last week's interview, and I absolutely loved it. I loved that he talked about taking players' strengths and developing a scheme around it, which is the one thing I thought Pat Shurmur was terrible at. And I really enjoyed what he had to say. I love that he worked for Bill Belichick. I love that he worked for Nick Saban. I love all that stuff. But I'm going to be skeptical on the Giants coaching staff until I get them into a season next year anyway, just based on what I've seen over the last couple years from a fan standpoint. And you know what? They might have made the right decision, and it might prove to be true. And Joe Judge, I'm cheering for Joe Judge. I want him to be the right guy. The problem is I hated the way it looked. I hated the way it looked like that we rushed. It was like, okay, I think we have our guy. Now we don't have our guy. Now let's just grab the next guy in line because we don't want to lose him to another team. I mean, 3 coaches picked their head guys before we could pick ours, right? So that's what it looked like for me. And even though I don't think Dave Gettleman is fully responsible for what has happened over the course of the last 8 years with the Giants, because I think Jerry Reese is truly to blame. And you've got to like the picks and you've got to like the talent that Dave Gettleman has brought in if you're solely judging him on that. And some of the decisions he made, everyone cheered for in the offseason. Now, because Nate Soldier sucked, that's not Dave Gettleman's fault. He made the right play at the right time, right? So I'm not going to eat his lunch for that. But the guy is still under scrutiny. And based on the way he chose his head coach and based on the way it went down, to me, that just put more question marks in everyone's head about Dave Gettleman if he really knows what he's doing. Now it came out that they were negotiating with Joe Judge the night earlier and all this BS. Yeah, I get it. But from a purely fan standpoint and from a purely like, let's just observe it from the outside in, that's what it looked like to me, and I thought that was a bad look for the Giants. But again, I want the Giants to do well. I'm a season ticket holder, and I would really like to see them win a couple games while I'm there, because as much as I love tailgating, I love winning that much more. In other news, in New York City, the New Jersey Devils have fired their GM, Ray Shero, and they went on to snap the Tampa Bay Lightning 10-game winning streak, which was nice to see. I just think the GM head coaching relationship has become extremely commercialized over the course of, let's call it, the last 5 to 10 years, with in-depth analytics and in-depth look into data, into how games are won and lost. The GM has gone from, I'm the guy that picks the talent, the coach is the guy that coaches the team, to the GM not only picks the players and the talent, but in a lot of cases, especially I think in baseball, and now you're seeing a lot more, I feel like in football, is the GM's responsible for the scheme too. They're responsible for strategy, for X's and O's, and I just don't think I agree with that. And to see someone like Ray Shero, who's had incredible success at the general manager level, most notably with the Pittsburgh Penguins and I want to say the Washington Capitals, it's disappointing to see that someone like that wasn't able to bring the Devils back to what they were known for in the early 2000s under Lou Lamoriello. And I wonder if that's another firing in the NHL world that has come to light due to the spotlight on coaching scandals and the mistreatment of players, which over the course of the last 6 to 8 weeks has been happening in the background and no one has paid attention to it. So that's a topic for another discussion, though. So, but based on the Devils firing Ray Shero and based on the Islanders having just another incredible season, and this is the second year under Lou Lamoriello, second year under their new head coach, who, for whatever reason, he's a short guy, he's got a bald head, he's incredible, won the Stanley Cup with the Capitals. Why his name's escaping me right now is really annoying. But that's a great example of how a general manager and a coaching staff and an organization are on the same page, and they're using each of their job descriptions to make their players better. Whereas in the Devils organization, in the Giants organization, probably in the Knicks organization, a little bit in the Nets, but it seems to me that they're figuring it out based on their free agency pickups over the last year, that like it's just a microcosm of either A, the New York spotlight, or B, the inability for high-profile teams to have patience and actually rebuild. And I think you see that a lot in New York because of the spotlight. And I think you have to give a lot of credit to the New York Rangers, who in the same market have dedicated themselves to a full rebuild, unlike so many other teams in our market, and it's really paid off for them. I would argue that the Yankees did a great job with a full rebuild over the course of the last 5 years, and I think that's why they've got a lot of success now too, and I think that's why they are a World Series frontrunner coming up into the season coming up. So, Ruben, we are at the 7:30 hour. I have gone on, we've talked about a lot, but when we get back, we are going to talk some national championship. We are going to talk some hockey, which I'm excited about. And if you would like to call in, 609-807-2492. Ruben, take us out.
Are you looking to become a better leader, whether that's in business, in sports, or in life, and you haven't found a book yet to help you get to that game-changing aha moment? Well, we have the book for you. Tighten the Lug Nuts. The Principles of Balanced Leadership. Tighten the Lug Nuts will help you get to that game-changing leadership moment. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iBooks, or at 360managementservices.com. That's the number 360managementservices.com. Pick up your copy today and start changing your leadership styles.
Thank you, 360 Management Services. Tighten the Lug Nuts, written by Rocky Romanella. Great read on leadership, relates to both business, life, sports. It's outstanding. Once again, we are broadcasting live on Facebook. You can find us at Andrew Romanella's page, Rocky Romanella's page, and obviously at the Wide World of Rome. You can find us on social media at Wide World of Rome, and you can also find us, I don't know, just Google our names. You could probably find anything you wanted about us, which is pretty cool. We are going to get into some hockey. And I'm excited to talk hockey, and I've got a fun story I'd like to share with everyone. So on Thursday night of last week, I had the opportunity to attend the New York Rangers New Jersey Devils game at Madison Square Garden. And the Rangers were playing a young goaltender named Igor Shesterkin. I still haven't been able to figure out how to pronounce his name. He's a 24-year-old Russian goaltender who, at every single level of his development, has absolutely dominated play. And for those of you who don't know, in Russia, there's a league called the KHL, which is the NHL equivalent in Russia. It's the second most dominant league in all of the world. Great place to find players. And he was the number one goaltender in that league. And last year, he came to Rangers training camp, got edged out by Alexander Georgiev, another young goaltender, and Henrik Lundqvist, obviously, who is the king and is kind of on his way out. Similar, not similar to Eli Manning, but similar to Eli, and actually probably more similar, unfortunately, to probably Philip Rivers, where Henrik Lundqvist has achieved everything in that hockey has to offer except a Stanley Cup. So gold medal, MVPs, Vezina trophies, everything but a Stanley Cup. So Igor Shesterkin is in his second start in the NHL. And by the way, he leads every single AHL goaltending category. He's the number one goaltender in the AHL. For those of you who don't know, the AHL is the AAA baseball of hockey. It is the G League, if you will, of the NBA. So everyone has some perspective there. And the Madison Square Garden was absolutely buzzing. 2 nights earlier, Igor made his debut into the NHL, gave up a couple goals early, settled in. His teammates picked him up, and they ended up winning over, I think it was the Toronto Maple Leafs, actually, that night that they won. I actually think I'm wrong there, though. So they won his first game. No, excuse me. They beat the Colorado Avalanche, best team in the NHL. They brought this kid up to play the best team his first game. Gotta love it. So Igor's playing, and Madison Square Garden's absolutely buzzing, and the Rangers get out to an early lead. Great pass from behind the net to Tony DeAngelo, who scores the first goal of the game. And 3-2 after the first, high-flying, high-scoring, a lot of shots, a lot of energy. And in the second period, something happened to me that I don't think I've ever seen happen for my favorite team at home. And Tony DeAngelo scored a hat trick. And for those of you, I'm guessing all of you, who know what a hat trick is, that means you scored 3 goals in a game. And everyone throws their hats on the ice in celebration. And I was with a good friend of mine, a guy from work named Michael Brown, big Ranger fan, big hockey guy. He's from upstate New York, so he knows his hockey. That's what you got to love about upstate New York. There are certain pockets of the U.S. that are just bred to talk hockey. So I'm out at the game with Mike, and Tony DeAngelo scores the 3rd goal, and the crowd's going nuts. I'm like, it's a hat trick! Oh my God! Ah! You know, we're singing the goal song, which is the best in the league. Oh, going nuts. And we both look at each other like, yo, you gonna throw your hat? And he looks at me and goes, I love this hat too much. I go, me too. I'm not throwing it. And so we decided not to throw our hats, and I can't decide if that was sacrilegious or not to the hockey gods to not throw our hats on the ice. But we decided not to because we love them too much. And that was a pretty funny, and it was really cool to see a hat trick in person. I've seen a hat trick before, but against my team and on, in a different barn and all that stuff. So, but it was really cool. They ended up winning, which was a lot of fun. But to see a hat trick in person, the crowd's buzzing because you got a young goaltender in net, and you've got a young guy in Tony DeAngelo who had a 5-point game. And for a Rangers fan base to watch a full-scale rebuild kind of come to fruition this season where, you're on the borderline of a playoff spot, you fight in every game, you play great versus good teams, you play bad versus bad teams, so indicative of a young team. You just have to get excited about sport when you're at those moments. And when you see those games and you get to be a part of that stuff, I tell you what, it's just one of those things that you never forget. And I know I'm going to talk about hockey, but just because we're on sports moments, I really do wish my brother was here, because some of the sports moments that we have experienced together are some of the best moments in our lives. And I'll just name a couple, and for whatever reason, they all happened at Citi Field. So Citi Field, obviously, where the Mets play their home games, but Andrew and I had the opportunity to be at Johan Santana's no-hitter, which I can't tell you. Still brings chills. Andrew and I were hugging each other in the stands. It was as if my brother threw the no-hitter, and I don't know if anyone's seen a game like that, but a no-hitter was amazing. And to be the only one in the history of the New York Mets and you're at that game, that's amazing. We saw the Winter Classic when the Rangers played the Sabres a couple years ago at Citi Field. I still remember the game where the Giants played the Carolina Panthers deep in December. They needed to win to get into the playoffs. There was so much snow in the stands. Everyone was throwing snowballs. I was hammered, I think. But it was a really fun time. Great sports experience. And that's what I had the other night at the Rangers-Devils game, when you watch a hat trick, and for a young kid to do it, like Tony DeAngelo, watch a young goaltender in their second start ever. That was really cool. It's something that makes you want to get more tickets, go to more games. So from an NHL standpoint, on the East side, you've got the Washington Capitals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Boston Bruins, and the Tampa Bay Lightning leading the Eastern Conference. And if you haven't had a chance to watch the Capitals play, do so. It's just an incredible team. You got a guy in Alexander Ovechkin who has all the talent in the world, scores more goals than anyone else out there, and has just got an attitude on the ice when he plays that is just, it's a lot of fun to watch. You've got a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins who just will never go away. No matter how bad or good they start, they will always find themselves in the playoffs. And I think that that's just because they have an anchor like Sidney Crosby. They've got guys like Evgeny Malkin. They've got guys like Matt Murray in net. They've got guys like Chris Letang on the back end. Their team is littered with all-stars. And I want to take a minute to talk about the Boston Bruins, though, because the Boston Bruins have one line that scores over 50% of their goals, and that is Brad Marchand. That's Pasternak, and oh my God, the guy. I'll look it up. I'll find it for you. But it's Brad Marchand. It's Pasternak, the guy from the Dunkin' Donuts commercials, and those guys, they literally score all their goals. Oh, Patrice Bergeron, excuse me. And those guys score all their goals, and it's absolutely incredible that their roster is able to put together one line that produces it. And in a time in sports, especially in hockey, when you see a lot of mixing and matching, it's Patrice Bergeron, it's Brad Marchand, and it's David Pasternak. That's the number one line. And let me just read. So David Pasternak in 46 games has 35 goals, 30 assists for 65 points. Brad Marchand in 46 games has 20 goals, 42 assists for 62 points. And Patrice Bergeron has 19 goals, 19 assists for 38 points. Now, all guys, only one of them doesn't have 20 yet, so they're all going to be over 30 goal scorers. They all may have over 85 points by the end of the year. They could all have 100 points, which is just unheard of. The next guy with the most goals has 14. And, you've got a line that on any team in the NHL would be the number one line. They are the number one line in the NHL. And to have three guys that dominant, that play together so well, it's a recipe for success. It's as if you've got a great quarterback, a great running back, and a great wide receiver. It's as if you've got it's like a big three in basketball, probably the closest to a big three in basketball that you can get in hockey. And I'm talking about the best line in hockey right now. I'm talking about the Boston Bruins. They have a lead 1-0 over the Philadelphia Flyers right now, if anyone's paying attention. By the way, the Rangers are playing the Islanders tonight, which is exciting. But you've got a line in Boston that's really transcending what it's like to be a first line for the rest of the league. And you're doing it in a sport where if Boston doesn't have a good third or fourth line come playoff time, it won't matter how good their big three is. And that's where hockey is going to differentiate itself from the NBA. So, yes, it's a big three. One of them got snubbed. I think it was Marchand that got snubbed from being an all-star this year, but he'll find his way in because someone won't go. So all three of them are all-stars. All three of them are number one in their categories. And if the Bruins can't figure out a way to produce a fourth line that produces for them in the playoffs, they will not win. And that's what I love about hockey. It is the purest team sport out there. Whereas your big three in basketball, if you have the three best players in the NBA on the floor, you're not losing. It's impossible to lose. Look at the Golden State Warriors for the last 6 years. It's not like guys 8, 9, and 10 on the bench are going to win them the NBA championship game. Whereas in hockey, the guys who are 10, 11, and 12 on your depth chart could easily win you the Stanley Cup. And I love that about hockey. Oh, Ruben, it looks like we have a phone call. Let's tee it up. Why wait any longer? I would love to talk to someone. Who do we got on the line?
Mr. Romanella, it is your co-host of the Rome Show.
It's actually the host of the Rome Show. Andrew Romanella has joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, get excited. The Rome has joined us. Rome, did you land? Are you landed, or are you still on the plane?
I legitimately just paid for my Easy Pass payment out of the P4 parking lot, and now I am currently on my way out of Newark Airport, so I was able to catch the last 30 minutes of the show while on the plane, and now I'm able to call in.
Outstanding. Well, we appreciate you joining the show, obviously. We appreciate you hosting the show when you have the opportunity to get here. So you were out in Salt Lake City. You were shredding the gnar, as they would say. So were you skiing or were you snowboarding?
So, actually, it's funny. I did both. So I was a snowboarder, as you know, up until I was about 15 years old, and then went out to Utah a few years ago with Big Rock, Mr. Tighten the Lug Nuts, and he taught me how to ski. So I got a chance to ski for a little bit, but since our brother-in-law Chris is a snowboarder, I took his snowboard for a few runs, and I got to tell you, Rock, I don't know, man, like a hidden talent right there. I didn't realize I was as good as I was, so, you know, I might become snowboarder again now.
So when you gain, so that's cool. So when you gain confidence, though, and you're on the slopes, and you see the half pipe, and you see some of the jumps that they have set up for you on the different runs, like, the more you get excited, are you trying to do a fakie to 360 to, like, big air? Like, what are you doing?
Well, we're not going that extreme because I do like my life, and I would really enjoy living it for hopefully another lot of years. But we do get a little extreme. They have mini jumps in Park City. They line the sides of the run. So it's almost like if you get close to the tree line, as crazy as that sounds, you have these mini jumps that get you about a foot or two in the air. So as our father probably dislikes, but myself and our brother-in-law love, is we try and hit those as much as possible. On day one, I have to be honest with the Romo Sapiens, I ate it. Nice. I was a yard sale. My skis were everywhere. My poles were everywhere, and that did not go according to plan. So my X game bid from the jump standpoint is not there yet, but we land some of them.
I love it. I love it. And what a great term. Yeah. I think one of the most underrated terms in all sports is yard sale, which I just think is hilarious. Cause I picture your skis in every different direction. I picture your gloves. I picture like your goggles like are over your face and like you're breathing, so they fog up and you can't see anything.
Yes, I actually then in turn scratched my goggles trying to clean them because I yard sailed that hard.
Wow, that's aggressive.
Yeah.
Well,
it was quite enjoyable.
So thanks for the input on skiing and snowboarding. I don't know. So we've talked about the Houston Astros. We've talked about we did a recap from the NFL games, and we're talking some hockey. We talked some New York sports. Do you want to put your stamp on any of the major finding in sports before we close this thing out and talk national championship football?
Well, I heard a few things, actually. You'd be surprised on how much of the show I was able to listen to. Two things. The first one is the whole Astros scandal. I think the best thing that the owner of the Houston Astros did was fire both the general manager and the head coach. And listen, in 2018, I had the chance to hear A.J. Hinch speak after the World Series. He came down to the ABCA Coaches Convention that I spoke about last week on last week's Rome Show. Check it out on the podcast, by the way. iTunes, Apple, wherever you listen to it.
Love it.
And AJ's a great man. Awesome dude, but he's wrong. And the owner was 100% correct. They did not start this whole thing, but they didn't do anything to fix it or to stop it when they knew it was going on. And that's the heart of the issue. And if you have no integrity as an organization, how can we as fans really buy into what you're doing? I heard you make the point about Jose Altuve. Jose Altuve is loved by everybody in Major League Baseball. But now does this taint Jose Altuve? Do we believe he's not as good as he really was? Is Bregman not as good as he really is because he's been getting signs for the last 3 years? So I think ultimately on that situation, you needed to close it out. I'm pumped that the Devils fired their GM on the same note. I liked Ray Shapiro, but I like winning more. And for a franchise that's won for 15 of the last 20 years, the last 5 years have been miserable as a Devils fan. And when you see the Rangers go through a full rebuild, and you see the Islanders do what the Islanders have done the last 2 or 3 years with your homemade general manager and president,
Lou Lamoriello.
Yep, it's hurtful. So that needs to happen. And the last thing, Nohan. I heard you. I heard what you said. I wish Andrew could call it. We have seen some fantastic sports moments. And for the Romo Sapiens out there, I want you to understand. I told Rocky that it was sacrilegious that he didn't throw his hat on the ice when the hat-trick happened. And the hockey gods are going to be a little upset with him because at the end of the day, it's not about the fashion, it's about the fanhood, and the hat should have been on the ice.
Listen, I love this hat, and just for the record, I searched high and low for this CCM Rangers hat. I had to go on DicksSportingGoods.com to find that it still was made when I purchased this hat. I love this hat.
That's so fun. Well, good. I'm glad you have it. I hope it doesn't turn into the Rangers not getting a playoff spot, because the hockey gods hold it against you.
Listen, I think it's liberating to know that I don't think that the hockey gods will do anything to me. I think it's liberating as a fan to lose some superstition. I think we all need to lose a little superstition out there.
Well, that's fair, because as a baseball guy, we live in the superstition realm way too often. And it's almost like, you're like, well, do I have to eat the same breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day because we won one of our last 5 games? But that day I ate those eggs? No, you don't. So I agree with you on that. My question to you, though, is, of the 40,000 at MSG that night, how many hats do you think ended up on the ice?
There actually wasn't that many, quite frankly. For as excited as the crowd was for the hat trick, not many people. I mean, listen, you're in New York City.
Really?
You got a lot of people coming from work in Madison Square Garden, and you got a lot of people that probably paid a lot of money for their hats. You probably got a lot of designer hats in there, I think.
New York. Yeah, I love it.
All right, so, Andrew, this is the first time you get to be a guest. This is the first time the tables have turned, and I get to kind of drive the conversation here. So we're going to pretend that you just turned your Twitter feed on, or you turned on your Instagram, and you see 49ers over the Packers. Do you like it or you dislike it?
I like it. I like it a lot. I think that I heard you talk about how you were a little suspect on the Packers this year. I know they're 13-3. I know they have Aaron Rodgers, and I know that they're a very quality football team that beat an even more quality football team over the weekend. All of those things are very true, but I just believe in what this 49ers organization is doing. And when you have a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo, who, in my opinion, and I don't think this is a majority opinion. I think it's a minority opinion. But in my opinion, I think Jimmy Garoppolo can lead a game and lead you to victory. I don't think he needs to on the San Francisco 49ers. That's what's dangerous about them, is they're doing all this winning, and I don't even think we've seen the full best of Jimmy G, because I don't think you even need to see the best of Jimmy G. So, Rock, honestly, man, I take the 49ers. I've been taking the 49ers. And on the Instagram fan polls, right, I was taking a look at those while I was on the plane. There are a lot of people that are choosing Green Bay. I would say it's a 50-50 split. I honestly thought San Francisco would be a 100% pick, but a lot of people are believing in Aaron Rodgers.
No, I think I'm on board with the Niners too. How about this storyline though? Tom Brady's career comes to an end. Jimmy Garoppolo's career comes to fruition.
He wins the Super Bowl as a starter.
Right? What better I guess just like proof that Jimmy G was the right guy. Like, what better proof for that guy? I mean, he's clean cut, he's good, and he continues to persevere on the field. So I think that's going to be a fun storyline to talk about. I think if the 49ers make it to the Super Bowl, I think in that 2-week buildup, you're going to see a lot of Patriots drafted it, learned from Tom Brady, broke out on his own, came up, got hurt, but rebuilt himself in the same way. I think you're going to hear a lot about that story. So next up, you open up your Twitter feed on Monday morning next week. Titans stun the Chiefs in Kansas City. Like or dislike?
Oh, man. It depends on which angle you're coming from. I like it from the standpoint of I could believe it, but I dislike it from the standpoint of I think this is the year for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's been 50 years, Rock, 50, since the Kansas City Chiefs have won a Super Bowl, okay? Now, you just said throw superstition out the window, but there's something fun about that storyline. And at 24-0 in the first quarter, with the history of Andy Reid and the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid have lost to the Tennessee Titans at home, right? A bad Tennessee Titans team. I know they're playing Houston.
Love it.
We've seen this story before. The Kansas City Chiefs were 1-11 at Arrowhead in playoff games at home since 1995 going into that game, and they found a way to come back from 24 down. That is why I believe, as much as I want to like the Titans winning that game, I'm going to dislike it. I take the Chiefs. And I think we're seeing the arrival of Patty Mahomes, man. I don't know about you, Rock, but I felt like people were a hair down on him during the regular season. But he's really just showing you how good he is.
I don't know how you could be down on Patrick Mahomes. Anyone who questioned Patrick Mahomes in the middle of the year, sucks, I think. Or they're just doing it. That's, you know what, if you were down on Patrick Mahomes this year, that's the hot takes that you hate.
Yes, you're 100% correct.
That's the hot take.
Oh, he got a high ankle sprain. Great, he got injured. That doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback.
Let's take it a step further. Andy Reid finally wins the Super Bowl. Like or dislike?
I like it. And I think this is more of a like because I'm one of those huge fans of Andy Reid, regardless of if he's won a Super Bowl or not. That's just the way I feel. I think it would be super awesome to see that story. And I think it would be super cool, too, because when you look at the course of what Andy Reid has done for both the Philadelphia Eagles and now the Kansas City Chiefs, he's fully turned those organizations around. I mean, the Chiefs were a laughingstock. The Eagles were nothing until he brought in McNabb, and they did what they did for that 10 to 15 years. And I know it was Doug Peterson and another regime that won a Super Bowl, but he made the Eagles relevant for 15 years. They were in X amount, 3 or 4 straight NFC Championship games. It's his time. It's his time. He's a great coach. He's done things the right way. He's got the team around him. They have the talent. And I think it's the year, man. I had the Ravens. I picked them from week 1. They disappointed, so now I'm jumping on the Chiefs bandwagon.
Wow. I might disagree with you on that one, though.
Really? What do you got, the 49ers?
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Niners all the way. And then just my overall love of underdogs wants the Titans to go in. I think if the Titans somehow stun the Chiefs, it's whoever it's the NFC Super Bowl this year. But I would really like to see 49ers Chiefs. I think that would be the best Super Bowl with the teams remaining.
If the Titans win, a Miami Dolphins jersey around with pride, I promise you.
Oh,
that.
hell yeah, definitely. Ryan Tannehill for president. All right, so
here's one for you real quick. Speaking of the NFL, I actually believe what's going to happen because Tua Tagovailoa got injured, I have a weird feeling he's going to drop and somehow end up on the New England Patriots.
Interesting. I don't know if I see that, but you might be right. Well, I guess you're going on the Saban Belichick connection.
Yes.
Not
and I think that the injuries scare people, especially with what's gone on with Carson Wentz. when you look at getting a high draft pick of a quarterback, you expect him to play 16 games in the playoffs every year. And Tua Tagovailoa hasn't played a full season since he's been in college.
I like it. And what better way to transition into tonight? We've got the college football national championship game. So, Andrew, I'm going to ask you, is the game tonight, I think that there's 3 games tonight, and I want you to tell me which you think is going to actually determine. So, is tonight Clemson versus LSU? Is it Trevor Lawrence versus Joe Burrow? Or is it Dabo Swinney versus Ed Orgeron? Which is the real storyline?
I think the real storyline is Dabo Swinney versus Ed Orgeron. And then to double down on that, I think the backside storyline of that is the offensive coordinator for LSU against the defensive coordinator against Clemson. So it comes down to coaching, because that is the best scoring offense on the LSU side, and it's the best scoring defense on the Clemson side. And what's the common statement, Rock? Something's got to give. So Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, yeah, they got to go head-to-head. Absolutely. Of course. But it comes down to the schemes and what each staff is able to do playing against the better opponent on the other side of the ball.
Something's got to give. I thought you were going to say defense wins championships.
It does. And honestly, am I supposed to be giving my pick right now, or are we waiting a minute to give it?
Well, we're coming up to the deadline. You got about 60 to 120 seconds left here, so we're gonna have to make it. We're gonna have to make a pick.
All right, I'm going with Clemson. You know why? Because I don't bet against Dabo Swinney. They've won 29 in a row. I don't care how many points LSU scores. I don't care how good the team is. I am taking Dabo Swinney and Clemson 100% out of 100% of the times, no matter who's on the other side of the field.
In any other year, I would agree with you. But I am going to pick Ed Orgeron, Joe Burrow, and the LSU Tigers.
Wow.
Because this season I have watched more college football than I have in a while, and I believe that the LSU Tigers have something special. I think they've got I want to use the word solid. I think they've got a solid football team. I think what Ed Orgeron has done to bring back the LSU Tigers to prominence has been incredible. The fact that they can beat Alabama, the fact that they can just have one incredible season, and I love Ed Orgeron probably more because of his appearance in The Blind Side. I love his voice. I love the way he treats his players. I love the way he treats the opposing players after games, guys that he recruited. And I've been on Joe Burrow's bandwagon now for about a month, and I'm not getting off. I'm going LSU Tigers. So, Rock Rome, LSU, Andrew Rome, Clemson. You're about 10 minutes away from kickoff. Only time will tell. Andrew Romanella, I really appreciate you calling into the show and taking me through it. We missed you in person today. But do you know when we'll be back?
We will be back next Monday, and I believe that is January 20th.
That's right. We will be back next Monday, January 20th, 7 p.m. You will find us here on HamiltonRadio.net. You will find us on that's Channel 2, HamiltonRadio.net. We will be together. Andrew will be in this chair. I will be in the other chair. We will be live on Facebook. You can find us on the Twitter, on the Instagram, at Wide World of Rome. Listen to us on whatever you listen to your stuff on. Please listen, pay attention to Andrew's fan interactions, because we're going to have some great polls set up for you next Sunday night. Thank you for the listens. Thanks for the follows. We appreciate it. Ruben, take us on out.
Do this look like work to you? Nah. Looking at the lights like it's all that is for me. Everyone tonight is here.